Welcome to the Happy Black Woman Podcast, where we're on a mission to empower women to transform their lives through personal development and entrepreneurship. We bring you all the information, inspiration, and motivation you need to create a life of happiness, success, and freedom. Now, please welcome your host, the happy Black woman herself, Rosetta Thurman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Happy Black Woman Podcast. This is Rosetta, and I am so excited to share another amazing episode with you today. But before I do, I want to thank you for listening and sharing, and most of all, rating and reviewing our podcast. We have had over 200,000 downloads of our podcast since we started, and that is just phenomenal. And I have to say it's because of your listens, your shares with your friends and family. So if you haven't had a chance to, please go to iTunes and search for Happy Black Woman Podcast and give us a rating or a review so that other women can find the podcast and be inspired as well. Thank you guys again so much for getting us over the milestone of 200,000 downloads. And now for today's episode, we are talking to Dafina Lovelace. She is the founder of Embrace Change Yoga, and she has such a beautiful spirit that I'm excited to share with you today. Welcome, Dafina.
Hello, Rosetta. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being on the show and making time for this interview today. I love to tell everybody listening how I came across my guests and why I'm featuring them. So Dafina is definitely one of the women in my inner circle in our Happy Black Woman Mastermind program. And she has just done an amazing job in turning her passion, her purpose into a business. And so I hope that she inspires you to do the same thing, obviously. I'd like to share my story, but I always find that it's even more powerful when I share the stories of the women in my inner circle. Like, it's not just me who's doing this. There are all these other women who are walking the walk and blazing that path for all of you. So, Dafina, I've got the chance to get to know you over the past few months in our mastermind, in our Launch Your Business program. And I know the incredible work that you're doing. But for everyone listening for the first time, tell us about your mission and the work that you do.
Absolutely. So Embrace Change Yoga, the purpose of this business, of this movement that I've started, is to really help upwardly mobile professional women be healthier so that they know that they matter. My goal is to really help people decrease the manifestations of stress in their body and really tap into their power, unleash their potential, and live the life that they are dreaming and working so hard for. And one of my tools that I love to use to do this is yoga.
I know a lot of ladies listening are like, okay, I have heard of yoga and I have stress and this is right up my alley. So I know that this is going to be a great conversation. Can you share a little bit more about your background and your journey to get here? Like, were you, obviously you have an expertise in yoga, but how did you get into yoga and how did you ultimately end up turning it into a business?
So I grew up in Staten Island, New York, and, back in the day, like everybody else, I wanted to, well, not everybody, but if you watch the popular TV show, A Different World, it was all about going away to college and going away to a HBCU. And so I tried that, but it didn't work out so well for me. So it actually took me 7 years to get my undergraduate degree. But one of the ways that, and there was a lot of stress as a college student, I think a lot of people can relate to that. But one of the things that happened after I returned home and kind of found my way is that I got into corporate America and a lot of issues came up for me, a lot of issues that stem from just growing up in an environment where I didn't feel as though I mattered. And then going to work in a corporate environment where I felt like I was just a number. I was under a lot of stress as a computer programmer. I was a computer science undergrad major. I was dealing with the Y2K bug, so probably showing my age a little bit there, but it was just a very stressful work environment and I wasn't feeling nurtured. I wasn't feeling appreciated and just started to see the manifestations of stress, not sleeping well, gaining weight, anxiety issues. And I just happened upon a yoga studio, ironically, in my neighborhood across from the public pool I used to swim in as a kid. And that started my yoga journey. And what I realized was that it allowed me to have a level of playfulness as an adult that I didn't get to experience much anymore. And that was back in 1999. And whenever I was going through bouts of depression or anxiety or feeling uncertain about myself, one of the things that like my mom would always chime in with is, have you done yoga? Did you do yoga today? And it just became my go-to tool for managing my stress and really getting into the core of what's going to make me happy and aligning myself with that purpose and that passion so that I could achieve the goals I set for myself. And so for me, it just became this story of like survival, if you will, and realizing that because I survived, therefore I matter. So yoga as a tool for me, became much more than exercise. I got into a lot of the philosophy and the science behind yoga. People don't necessarily realize that a large part of your yoga practice is meditation. The minute you're standing in one of these poses and you let your mind wander into any other realm, you're falling out immediately. And, like so many a lot of people will say, well, I'm not flexible, so I can't do yoga. And one of the things I like to say is that, kindergarten students that go to kindergarten aren't required to know their ABCs before they get there.
Right.
So, I think it's an accessible tool and it's just been life-changing for me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share that.
It sounds like it has been life-changing for you. I love how you talked about how it was like your go-to self-care tool at different times in your life. And I think it's so important for all of us to have something like that so that we're not lost. I think a lot of people get even more in a hole, feeling in despair when we don't have anything to turn to as something that we know will work. Some people it's prayer, some people it's straight meditation, some people it's exercise, eating a certain way. When you don't know what that thing is for you, it can be hard to get out of that hole when you fall into it. And we all fall into those holes. If you haven't yet, then, you're it's something that will happen in your life, not to worry you, but we all have those times. And I love how you also described yoga because a lot of people do think of it as just exercise for hippies, pretty much.
The crunchy granola folks, right?
Yes. You do yoga if you're a vegetarian and you have natural hair and yeah.
And you don't wear deodorant.
Right. All these stereotypes come up when you say yoga. And, when we think of yoga, you really don't even really think as much of Black women. You think of white women doing yoga, skinny white women, really. And maybe I'm showing my bias, but that's how I thought of it until I went to my first yoga class and I realized it's not what it was about at all. It's just the images that we see. And sometimes because of the images we see, we kind of take ourselves out of that. Like, oh, well, that's for white people kind of thing. We all have that list of things that are like, that's, for white people. And
exactly.
Yeah, that's yoga falls under that category for a lot of us. So I'm glad that you're here to help us, those of us that may not have known what it was about, to really give us the real deal. So tell us a little more about your philosophy and the kind of yoga that you exemplify, that you promote and all of that. Seems like there's so many kinds. There's Bikram yoga and Vinyasa yoga. And I just know beginner yoga. Like anytime I'm like, I'm a beginner. Tell me what's that. So can you give us just a snapshot of what the yoga is that you're talking about?
Yeah. So, yoga has been divided into these different sects, but I think for me, I like to just use the core principles of yoga. So, yoga has essentially these 8 limbs, and it's called the 8 limbs of yoga or Ashtanga. And Ashtanga is also known as a practice, but it really talks about that whole transformation of your moral fiber. How do you deal in the community? How do you eat so that you're working at your optimal best for your body? The exercise is a part of it. The mindfulness is a part of yoga. Meditation is a part of yoga, and so on. And there are all of these different facets of yoga, but a lot of people focus on the exercise piece. And, another place that you don't always think of yoga entering is into your leadership and how the way that you work and the way that you live, the way that you love. And so I use yoga as a leadership tool. And ultimately, for me, yoga is a practice of movement, and your body is made to move. And the more that you are able to listen to your body and hone in on what is your right versus wrong indicator that moves you, the better you can become a leader in all aspects of your life. So, for me, and everything that you brought up was one of the reasons that I wanted to become a certified yoga instructor, just because in so many part of in my professional career and now in my yoga career, it's very rare that you see someone with my background, a Black female who studied technology, who is an MBA and now is a yoga teacher. You don't see my circle of people that match that profile in any environment that I go into. It's very rare. And so with yoga, I try to keep it as pure and as basic as possible so that it becomes accessible to more people and not frightening in terms of, well, I study this sect of yoga or that sect of yoga. No, we're just going to talk about movement in your body and the different 8 limbs of yoga and how you can apply them to your life to live that dream that you have. And it's all about using your vessel to its optimal ability.
I love that you keep things simple, because that's such an important piece of getting people into the practice so they can see how it could be helpful for them. Same thing with meditation. People are like, oh, I have to sit for an hour and I can't sit still that long. And whatever their perceptions are, it keeps them from even trying it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so a lot of people, I've spoken to some potential clients that are like, I don't want to do yoga, I just want to do meditation. And I'm like, well, you understand yoga is meditation, and meditation is a component of yoga. And especially in our society, like we are very sedentary, unless you're in a metropolitan city, you're driving to work, you're not walking that much. So you're not even walking off your natural energy. So to be able to sit in meditation, of course, you're going to have a challenge because your body has been sitting all day. It's like, I just want to move. So, yoga is kind of that preparation even for meditation. And I would suggest people don't try to skip over one and just do the other.
Right. I think a lot of people, and we're going to have you share some action steps we can take to start to get into yoga. But I just wanted to touch on some of the barriers that people have to it, because I think one of the reasons that people are afraid of meditation or they're not willing to try it is because there is a fear underlying, whether it's unconscious or not, of like being alone with our thoughts. Like what thoughts might come up when I'm not being distracted by my phone or TV or Facebook or whatever. Like what happens when I'm alone with myself? And do you ever find that people have that fear when they go into yoga as well?
I think so. I think there's the lack of understanding that the brain's purpose or the mind's purpose is to think. And just like your heart's purpose is to beat and your lungs have a purpose of taking air in and sending air out of your body. And so that's just what it normally does, right? And so to fear what your body normally does, it's a fear. And sometimes you have to move forward through that fear, right? You have to understand that there is no reason to fear your own body, no matter, or dislike your own body, no matter what society might tell you. And meditation and even yoga, and I think that's why I like using yoga even as a meditation tool, because it's like an active meditation, if you will. So standing in a pose and holding that pose and focusing on your breathing allows you to venture into that path, the easy way into the meditation path without feeling so alone with your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the idea that once you do allow yourself to be in this meditative state, and we're often in meditative states more often than we realize. So driving sometime is a meditative state. If you've ever driven from home to the office and those days where you're just like, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it. Like, that's a meditative state. And that's why texting and driving and talking on the phone and driving is so risky. Just being able to, it's not necessarily even just being alone with your thoughts, but just not being attached to your thoughts.
Right.
Because there's so many times where, like, in our technological age, it can be like, oh, I have a thought of a question I have for Google. And immediately you're picking up your phone, you're putting down whatever else you were focusing on, and you've lost now this train of thought. And that can happen a good 5-10 times in a 10-minute span.
Yep.
So this happens to me, and I have to purposely, you talk about tips, but one of the things is, like, I have to purposely tell myself, is that the most important thing for you to be doing right now? Figuring out the answer to that question. And sometimes when you just don't hold on to it, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes go by, and you'll even forget about what was it that I was going to be doing.
Right.
Like, that wasn't that important. And so, in terms of that fear, sometimes you have to let those thoughts come up so you can begin to heal from whatever thoughts you're attaching yourself to. And sometimes you'll realize that those thoughts that are coming up are these limiting beliefs that are holding you back from achieving that next big thing that you want in life, you know?
Right. Definitely. Oh, I love this conversation. And I know that the ladies are listening and they're wondering, okay, well, now I get it. I feel like it could be beneficial for me. What are some action steps or tips they can use to get started with using yoga to decrease their stress?
I think number one is to believe you can do it, right? So stop giving yourself the excuses that we just talked about of being inflexible, because you practice flexibility in order to gain more of it. I think there's also an idea of sometimes you just have to not worry about what people think about you, because, that's their thought and you can't control their thought. And so go out and explore. I have some videos up on my webpage. I'll give you the web address, but try it at home first if you're too scared to go out to a studio. And also, different teachers will have a different voice, and you've got to find the right yoga instructor that's really going to work for you. So I know that for me, I've explored a lot of different yoga classes and a lot of yoga instructors, and there are some people that resonated with me and those that didn't. And I know for me as an instructor, there will be people that I resonate with and some people that I won't. And I don't take offense to that. It's like your preference for strawberry ice cream versus vanilla ice cream, whatever. But just keep trying it out. And I would say, even if you can't commit to a whole hour yoga class, start small. Start with 5 or 10 minutes, and some of my videos out on my YouTube channel will show you how to do that, and just give it a try, and try everything at least 3 times. That's my mantra when I teach. If I'm teaching a new pose, that first time you try it, it's like, are you crazy? What are you even asking me to do? The second time, you're like, oh, I think I almost understand her. And the third time, you might actually get the courage to let yourself have some fun.
Yeah.
And it's all about having fun.
Yeah, definitely. I love what you said about just trying it, because a lot of times people don't have what they consider to be a good experience the first time. They're like, oh, this is not for me, instead of just saying, oh, this instructor is not for me. Because there's tons of
Right.
instructors all over the world, and you're not going to resonate with all of them.
Right. And I think a lot of times this is one of the things you even taught us in the mastermind group, is that sometimes you just need to have some evidence of success. And if you're constantly telling yourself, no, I'm not going to do that, or I'm too scared, or I'm too, I hear a lot of it. I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm too inflexible, Black people don't do yoga. If you keep making up these excuses, you'll never build up the evidence of being able to succeed at something. And then if you succeed at yoga, what's the next thing that you could possibly succeed at? Just by trying and allowing yourself to try these new things and get out of the box that your environment has told you need to stay in. And so build up some evidence, like prove the statistics or the naysayers wrong. Just get out there and do it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, of course, I know that we're curious to know how a yogi, I don't know if that's the right thing to call you, a yogi?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. The
Our
yogi is the
yogi.
practitioner of yoga.
Yes.
The
How
yogi or
does
yogini.
yogini? Oh, that's pretty.
Mhm.
How does a yogini spend her day? What keeps you focused and productive throughout the day with all these thoughts coming in? And as you're building your business to support other women, there are some very different demands on your time now. So do you use yoga to address that, or what are some additional things that you have as part of your routine that can help our listeners?
Absolutely. So every day there's this idea of putting on your armor. And when I worked in financial services, it was me wearing my business suit. That was my armor. But now it's become more of like a mental, physical, psychological, and spiritual armor. And so I have a morning routine and I have a sleep routine. And those are kind of critical for me setting up and kind of detoxing from my day. So my morning routine is yoga based, it's meditation, affirmations, and journaling. And I try to spend 10 minutes doing each. And that's it. I don't need to do a full hour class. I don't have time every day before I go to work. And if I don't have 10 minutes, I do at least 1 minute of each of those. So I do one pose for a minute. I will sit and meditate for a minute, do some affirmations and journaling just for a minute. So, 5 minutes, and I've at least taken a little bit care of myself. But one of the things I've done recently, just because I've had so much trouble sleeping, and when you have a stressful kind of day at work, we take it home with us. So I'm sometimes still thinking about the conversation I had with a team member, or some calculation I haven't figured out, or some new service or product that I want to launch. And it's just holding on to me. So my sleep routine has become very important. And so I literally take a shower and rinse off the day. At night, I brush my teeth and I just journal. And that journaling exercise at night allows me to kind of get out of my head all of the thoughts that are still racing through, trying to jockey for position in my brain to be answered or to be solved. And then the other big thing I do is I don't allow my cell phone to be in my bedroom. So I put it Yeah, I put it in the bathroom. I'm not going to look at the time. I'm not going to scroll through social media until
Right.
I fall asleep. I intentionally turn that off probably about an hour before I go to bed. And it just helps me kind of give the same way you were as a kid, you know, brush your teeth, depending on who raised you and how you were raised. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like you had to go to bed by a certain time, or you had to do something before you could go to bed for some of us. And it's doing that for myself as an adult. And it's a nurturing of myself as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have that as a child, it's even more important to do it to yourself as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're establishing that habit of what you want your life to look like. And then in the middle of the day, I'm a lot more engaged and prepared because I'm taking care of myself and I'm really
Mm-hmm.
nurturing myself at the bookends of that day.
Yes, so many great tips that you shared, but I especially like the one about your cell phone, like just not even having it in your bedroom. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, I can't be without my phone. And there's so many studies that I know have been done on like technology addiction and all of
Yeah.
that. And there's so many yoga and meditation businesses that have popped up just because of that issue. Like there are places you
Right.
can go where you have to turn in your phone and they won't give it back to you until the end.
Is it?
Just how our society has evolved. So I just like that you do that just in general. And I just can't imagine, well, I can't imagine because I'm going to try it. How that might affect us. Like I know for me, I think like sometimes I hear my phone ringing, but it's not really
Mhm.
ringing.
Mm.
It's like a phantom ring. There was an article
Yes.
about it, like the phantom ring, like, or you'll hear somebody else's phone ringing maybe
Right.
outside and you'll think it's yours and you're like, oh, am I missing
Everybody starts
something?
growing. Mhm.
Is somebody trying to call me? And it's phenomenal just how we've changed. And I think these tools that you offer are the kinds of things that we can use to come back to ourselves and remember that
Mhm.
everything is not that big of a deal. There are so few things that need to happen right now, right here, right
Mhm.
now, unless you need to take somebody to the hospital, that they're dying. And
Right.
it's so hard to remember that now because everything seems so urgent.
Yeah, remember the time when like there was no call waiting, or like you were outside and didn't have a mobile phone, baby, and it's like if somebody called, they just didn't get you.
Right.
Like we sometimes don't realize that we still have the choice not to answer the phone or to turn your phone to do not disturb.
Hmm.
That's a setting in most phones, and you can put the people that might need you in case of emergency in there, like, okay, whoever, best friend, mom, emergency contact, I need to answer those. But some, like all the bells and whistles that are going on throughout the night, every time somebody's sending you an email, like you don't have to respond.
Mm-hmm. Oh, such a great reminder. I know our time is getting close today, but I do want to take the opportunity to ask about what inspires you book wise. We're always collecting book recommendations on the podcast because all of our guests are so wise. So,
Mm.
is there a book you can share with us that has really inspired you along your journey or helped you stay in alignment?
Oh my gosh. So one of my favorite books is probably from when I was a child. I have two. So when I was a child, one of the books that inspired me was by Judy Blume. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
I love that book.
Isn't it awesome? And a lot
Yeah.
of times when I journal, I still write in my journal, Dear God, just because of that influence.
Mm-hmm.
And then as an adult, one of the books that really shifted a lot of things for me was The Alchemist
Mm.
by Paulo Coelho.
Mm-hmm.
And I read that book when I was like traveling through India for 3 weeks. And it was just like this personal self discovery. It reminded me that I already have all the gifts and talents within me. It's just my decision to identify them and use them, which also related to this mantra that my mom has influenced me with since I was a kid, and it's been that you can do anything you put your mind to. And I never really understood it as a kid, but then as I got older, I was just like, oh, I could do this too, and I could do that too. But it's not everything that I put my mind to that I want to do. So it's all like figuring out what am I truly passionate about versus what I just happen to be good at. But
Oh, I love both of those.
that was a lot. Sorry.
Yeah. No, those were great. I'm always looking to add new books, and I was just going to say that I think that was the first time we had the Judy Blume book recommendation on the podcast.
Oh,
Um,
yay.
yeah, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's a children's book, but when you were a kid, didn't it like really transform you to read that?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, cool.
It was totally just like, what is about to happen to me, and like, who can I talk to about it? And it's just
Mhm.
been, yeah, definitely
Yes,
adventure.
yes. Okay. Well, one last question before we go, and that is given your journey that you've taken so far to turn your passion, your expertise, your purpose as a yogini into a business, what would be your number one piece of advice for someone who's just starting out? You know, that woman who may be a year, 2 years behind you. I mean, you've been doing the work and fleshing out your idea and launching your business, putting yourself out there. So many things have happened for you in such a short period of time. But knowing what you know now, what's the number one piece of advice you would give to that woman who is thinking about doing it?
Mm, mm. So my number one piece of advice would be don't follow the herd, trust yourself.
Mm,
I think we know the answers so often, but we don't always trust ourselves the first time. And it's not until sometimes we get off track in this following the herd mentality. That's where everybody else is going. So let me do that. And you get so far down that path. And then sometimes you course correct and come back to, oh, no, this is what I truly said I wanted. And that's still my passion.
mhm.
But if you just trust yourself, I'd tell you to get still, sit with it, be silent, meditate. But yeah, trust yourself. You have all the answers within you, and you
Mhm.
don't have to follow anybody else.
Yes, so true. So, so true. Great advice from Dafina Lovelace. And as people are listening, I know that a lot of them are wanting to keep in touch with you and stay connected to your work and get more of your resources. So, what's the best way we can do that?
Yes, the best way to keep in contact with me is to head on over to my website. That's embracechangeyoga.com. There you can download my Yoga as Leadership Manifesto, learn more about how yoga can really help you improve the way you work, live, and lead. And yeah, that's the best way to find me. EmbraceChangeYoga.com. All my contact information is up there, and you can sign up for my mailing list and hear about some cool programs I got coming up for the new year.
Wonderful. We will definitely put that link into the show notes along with Dafina's
Awesome.
bio so that you can stay connected with her. Dafina, thank you so much for our conversation today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having this platform and for just inviting me into your world. I love it.
Yay. Thank you. Well, all of you ladies listening, this is just the beginning of the Happy Black Woman podcast addiction that you're going to have because there are so many other episodes that I've done with incredible women just like Dafina. So if you haven't taken the opportunity to do so yet, go ahead and listen to our previous episodes by going to happyblackwoman.com and clicking on the podcast tab. You'll be able to listen to all of our previous episodes. And if you sign up on our website, you can get notified of new ones as well. Another thing I wanted to share before we close for today is that if you want to get the in-person experience of being a part of our Happy Black Woman tribe and try some yoga, we will be having a live 3-day retreat called Manifest Your Vision. And that is happening January 13th through the 15th in Tampa, Florida. If you are ready to manifest all of the goals that you have for 2017, you should join us. And the way to get your ticket is to go to happyblackwomanretreat.com. Hope to see you guys there. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Happy Black Woman podcast. If you want all the show's notes from today's episode, go to happyblackwomanpodcast.com. Plus, we'll send you a copy of Rosetta's free life mapping workbook. We look forward to empowering you next time. And until then, do something this week that makes you happy.